The wedding chapel smelled like roses and expensive lies. Soft piano music floated through the air, delicate and perfect. But my hands were cold, not from nerves, from instinct, because I knew my sister. And I knew that Brooke didn't do anything purely for love. She did things for attention, for control, for winning. And tonight she was winning everything. She stood at the altar in a designer gown that probably cost more than my car, her makeup flawless, her smile glowing, like she was the happiest woman alive. And everyone believed it. They believed she was the golden daughter, the bride, the one with a perfect life. Meanwhile, I stood in the second row wearing a simple navy dress, holding my clutch with both hands like it was keeping me upright. I wasn't her maid of honor. Of course not. Brooke didn't want me close to her. She wanted me visible, but powerless. Just close enough for people to see I supported her. Just far enough for her to humiliate me whenever she wanted. That was Brooke's specialty. Public smiles, private cruelty. The officiant's voice echoed through the chapel. Love is patient. Brooke squeezed her fiancé's hand dramatically. Her fiancé, Evan, stared at her like she hung the moon. He had no idea, because Evan was new. He hadn't lived inside Brooke's world long enough to see what she really was. But I had 32 years, and tonight, I had one job. Stay calm, smile politely, don't react. Because I'd learned the hard way. Brooke feeds on reaction. Then the officiant said the words that made the room hold its breath. If anyone here objects, silence. And Brooke slowly turned her head, just slightly, toward me. Not enough for anyone else to notice. Just enough for me to understand the threat behind her smile. Don't even think about it. I didn't blink. I stared back with the calmest face I could manage. And then it happened. A shadow moved beside me. A man I had never seen before slid into the aisle seat, like he belonged there. Tall, older, maybe late 52nds. A sharp gray suit, hands that looked too steady, eyes that didn't match the celebration. They looked like someone walking into a funeral. Before I could even turn fully, he leaned toward me like he was adjusting his jacket. And he pressed something cold into my palm. A USB drive. Black, small, unmarked. He didn't look at me while he did it. He just whispered so softly it blended into the music. Don't plug it in here. Not yet. My entire spine turned to ice. I froze, staring at my hand. And the man added one more sentence, the kind that changes your life in 2 seconds. It's the only thing that can save you. Then he stood up calmly and walked away, like he was never there. I sat there holding the USB like it was a bomb. My heart didn't race, it dropped, because suddenly I understood. This wasn't a wedding. This was a trap, and someone out there had proof. Proof that Brooke didn't want me alive long enough to stop her. I looked up again at my sister. She was smiling at the altar, radiant, pure, perfect, and in that moment I did something I didn't even recognize as myself. I smiled back, not because I was happy for her, but because I finally had something she didn't expect. Evidence. Let me rewind, because you need to understand why that USB made my blood run cold. My name is Ava Hart. I'm 36 years old, and my whole life, people have always made the same mistake about me. They think I'm quiet because I'm weak. But I'm quiet because I'm watching, because I learned early that the loudest people in the room are usually the ones hiding something. And Brooke was always loud, not with her voice, with her presence. She could walk into a room and make people rearrange themselves around her without ever saying a word. That's power, and she loved it. I was the opposite. I built my life in silence. I worked hard. I stayed out of trouble. I saved money. I stayed consistent. I did everything people say a woman should do to protect herself, and it still didn't protect me. From my own sister, I work in a field where facts matter. I'm a forensic accounting consultant, which is a fancy way of saying I find the truth people bury under paperwork, and I've been good at it for years. But the irony? The biggest fraud I ever faced wasn't in my job. It was in my family, because Brooke wasn't just my sister. She was my enemy. And the worst part? Nobody believed that. Because Brooke didn't look like an enemy. She looked like a blessing. I didn't even want to attend the wedding. Not because I hate weddings, but because I knew Brooke would use it as a stage to remind everyone who mattered, and who didn't, but I couldn't skip it. Because our mother's will made sure I couldn't when Mom died a year and a half ago. She left behind something bigger than grief. She left behind a trust fund, not billionaire money, but enough to change a life, enough to make someone greedy, dangerous. $1.2 million. Split between Brooke and me, but with one condition: both signatures required for any large withdrawal or major transfer. Mom was smart. She knew Brooke, maybe she didn't know everything, but she knew enough, and that clause was the one thing Brooke couldn't stand, because Brooke didn't want half, she wanted all, and she wanted it clean, quiet, without a fight, without a trail. That's where I came in. Brooke invited me to her wedding for one reason: so the world could watch me sit there like a supportive sister, while she set the final stage to take everything from me. Because Brooke didn't just want to win, she wanted to erase me. The ceremony ended in applause. Brooke and Evan kissed, people stood, phones flashed, and Brooke walked down the aisle like she was walking down a runway. She didn't look at me, not once. But when she passed my row, her fingers brushed my shoulder, soft, fake affectionate, and she whispered, "Don't ruin tonight, Ava." I whispered back without turning my head, "Wouldn't dream of it." She smiled wider. Because to Brooke, that sounded like obedience. But it wasn't, it was strategy. The reception was held in a luxury garden venue 20 minutes away. String lights, champagne towers, a live band, ice sculptures. Every detail screamed money. And the more I watched Brooke float through her guests like royalty, the more something inside me sharpened. Because it wasn't just a wedding, it was proof. Proof Brooke had been spending, lavishly, constantly, way beyond what she should have been able to afford. And I knew Brooke's income, her career in lifestyle branding had never paid like this, which meant she was spending money that didn't belong to her. I saw her friends, rich girls with perfect hair and empty eyes, laughing like life was easy. I saw my Aunt pat Brooke's cheek. I saw strangers toast to my sister's beautiful future. And then I saw Brooke's gaze flick to me, just one glance, quick, calculated. And I felt it, a signal, not to me, to someone else, because moments later, a woman I didn't recognize approached my table. Not a guest, not staff. A woman in a fitted black dress, hair tightly pulled back. The kind of woman who didn't smile because she didn't need to. She stopped behind me and leaned in close enough that I could smell her perfume. Clean, expensive, sharp. And she whispered, "She doesn't want you to leave this wedding standing." My hand tightened around my champagne glass. I didn't move. I didn't turn. I whispered back through my teeth, "Who are you?" The woman's reply was immediate, cold. "Someone who knows what's on that USB." My pulse spiked. The woman slid away as if she'd never been there. And that's when I knew this wasn't one person. It was a chain, a network. People watching Brooke, people waiting. And somehow, I was the key. I stepped away from my table slowly, casually, like I was just going to the restroom. But instead, I went straight toward the bar. My phone was in my hand, but I wasn't texting. I was scanning, looking for the man who gave me the USB. And then I saw him again, standing by the far end of the venue near the hedge line. Alone, watching. He wasn't drinking, he wasn't smiling, he was waiting. I walked toward him, slow enough not to draw attention, fast enough that my courage didn't run out. When I reached him, he didn't look surprised. He didn't even pretend. He just said, "Good. You didn't ignore it." My throat tightened. "Who are you?" He finally met my eyes, and his expression made my stomach sink, because he wasn't excited. He looked, "Sorry. My name is Victor." He paused, then lowered his voice. "I worked for your mother's attorney." I felt my face go still. "What?" He leaned closer. "Your mother didn't die not knowing. She died afraid." The music blurred. The voices around us turned distant. I gripped the USB inside my clutch so hard my knuckles ached. I whispered, "Afraid of Brooke?" Victor's answer came slowly, as if he wanted to be careful with every word. Afraid of what Brooke was willing to do. I stared at him. Then I forced one question out. "What is on the USB?" Victor's eyes flicked over my shoulder, toward the wedding head table, toward Brooke, then back to me, and he said something that made my stomach drop through the floor. "A confession." I blinked. "A confession of what?" Victor exhaled. The plan. Victor's voice stayed calm, but his words were pure gasoline. Ava, do not confront her tonight. I stiffened. My sister is setting me up. Why would I stay quiet? Victor shook his head slightly. Because tonight she has control. I lowered my voice to a whisper. Then when do I confront her? Victor's eyes sharpened. When you have witnesses who can't be bought. My fingers tightened around my clutch. I wanted to scream, to run, to grab Evan and drag him into the truth. But I forced myself to breathe, to listen. Victor continued. You're thinking this is about money. I swallowed. It is. Victor's face darkened. No, it started as money. He leaned closer. But now, it's about removal. My body went cold. Removal? Victor nodded once. Just once. Erasing you. Legally, financially, socially, I whispered. Why would she? Victor cut me off. Because she can't take everything while you're alive. My heart pounded so hard it felt visible. I whispered, is she trying to kill me? Victor didn't say yes. He didn't say no. He just said, do not drink anything she hands you. My blood turned to ice. Because suddenly I remembered, earlier that afternoon, Brooke personally brought me a drink. A special toast. I never touched it. Not because I suspected anything, but because I was busy pretending I wasn't tea shaking. Victor glanced down at my clutch. You haven't plugged it in. No. He nodded. Good. Because if she sees you react, she'll speed it up. I swallowed. What do I do? Victor's answer was simple. Terrifying. Play dumb. He stepped back slightly. Smile. Dance. Let her think she's winning. My jaw tightened. And then? Victor's voice dropped, lower than I thought possible. Then you give her the ending she deserves. He slipped away into the crowd like smoke. And I stood there with my heart pounding. Because the truth was suddenly clear. My sister's wedding wasn't the start of her new life. It was the night she planned to end mine. I forced myself to keep smiling, to keep breathing, to keep acting like I was just the quiet sister who didn't matter. Because that's what Brooke expected from me. That's who she thought I was. And for the next 30 minutes, I played my role perfectly. I clapped when people clapped. I laughed when people laughed. I danced just enough to look normal. I even let Brooke pull me into a photo, her arm wrapped around me, warm and fake, her lips pressed close to my ear as the camera flashed. And she whispered, "Don't embarrass me tonight, Ava." I smiled for the photo, and I whispered back, "I wouldn't dare." Brooke's eyes gleamed, because she thought she had me. Then the music changed, a slower song, the kind of song brides use to make everyone emotional. Brooke stepped onto the small stage in the center of the garden, microphone in hand. She tapped it lightly. Testing, okay. Her laughter was bright, perfect. And then she said, "I just want to take a moment to thank my family." My stomach tightened. Because Brooke didn't thank people. She performed gratitude the way actors perform love, and I knew exactly where her spotlight was about to land. She turned her head slowly and looked directly at me, especially my sister Ava. A few guests turned to look. My aunt smiled at me. Evan's parents nodded politely, and Brooke continued, "Ava has always been consistent." She paused, like she was choosing a compliment. Then she said, "Simple, responsible, predictable." Laughter rippled through the crowd. Not loud, but enough. Enough to sting. Enough to remind me. This was what Brooke lived for. Power over me. Brooke raised her glass. "Ava, you've always been there when I needed you." Her eyes softened, fake sweet. "And tonight I need you again." The guests leaned in. Curious. My throat dried up. Brooke smiled bigger. Because Mom would have wanted us to stay united. My blood went cold. She was bringing Mom into it, using her memory like a weapon. Brooke stepped off the stage and walked straight toward me. In her other hand, she held a slim folder, white, clean, the kind of folder that looks harmless, until you realize it's a knife. She placed it in my hands. "It's just paperwork," she said sweetly. "A little family thing. I didn't open it yet. I just looked at her." And Brooke leaned closer, still smiling for the guests. "Sign it tonight," she whispered, "or you're going to ruin everything." I could feel eyes on me. People around us were watching. Brooke had set it up like a scene. If I refused, I'd look bitter, jealous, unstable, the difficult sister. But if I signed, I'd be dead on paper. Maybe worse. Brooke's voice stayed sweet, loud enough for the guests. It's just a form, Ava. You're an accountant. You love forms. More laughter. My face stayed calm, but my hands were trembling under the folder. I glanced down. The top page said, Family Trust Adjustment. Consent Form. I swallowed hard. My heartbeat was thunder. Then Evan stepped in, smiling awkwardly. Hey, everything okay? Brooke turned instantly soft. Perfect, she said. I'm just making sure Ava feels included. Included, like I wasn't her sister, like I was a stray dog. She led into the venue out of pity. Evan looked at me kindly. Thanks for coming, Ava. It means a lot. For a moment, I almost felt guilty. Not for Brooke, for him. Because Evan had no idea he was marrying a snake. Brooke touched his chest affectionately. Go dance, baby, I'll catch up. Evan kissed her cheek and left. The second he was gone, Brooke's smile vanished. Not completely, just enough, just for me, she whispered. You're not smart enough to fight me. I held her gaze. And I did something Brooke never expected. I smiled, soft, calm, like I was giving in. Of course I'll sign, I said quietly. Brooke's eyes brightened. Good. I lifted the folder slightly. I just want to read it first. Brooke blinked. Her smile tightened. What? I stayed sweet, just give me 10 minutes. Brooke leaned in. Her voice dropped like poison. No. I raised an eyebrow. Brooke forced her smile back on, turning slightly so the guests could see her friendly face again. Ava, she whispered through her teeth. Right now, I looked at her, and I realized the truth. This wasn't about trust. This was about timing. Whatever she planned was scheduled, and she needed my signature before something happened. So I nodded slowly, and I said, okay. Brooke's eyes narrowed. Now. I tilted my head. I'm pregnant? I lied easily. Brooke froze. That wasn't part of her script. What? I pressed my hand to my stomach like I might be sick. I'm not feeling well. I just need to use the bathroom. Brooke's face flashed with panic for half a second. Then anger. Then control. She forced a laugh for the crowd. Oh my God, Ava. Go, go. Her nails dug into my arm when she leaned closer. But don't disappear, she whispered. I'm watching you. I nodded. And I walked away slowly. But the second I turned the corner behind the hedge line, beer, I stopped smiling. Beer, my eyes locked forward. Beer, my breathing turned sharp. And I whispered to myself, Burr USB. Now. Beer, I slipped into the venue restroom, locked myself in the farthest stall, pulled the USB from my clutch. BR, and held it in my palm. BR, my hands were sweating. Victor's voice echoed in my head. Burr, don't plug it in here, but I didn't have time. Brooke was hunting my signature like it was oxygen.bi. I looked around .br, then I spotted the safest thing possible. A teenage bridesmaid's forgotten iPad on the counter .br, password-free .br, still unlocked. I hesitated. Then I remembered something. Burr, this wasn't about stealing a device. .br, this was about surviving .br. So I took it. I went back into the stall, inserted the USB with an adapter the iPad case had .br, and the screen blinked .br, a folder appeared. One file .bar named, Burr Play Me, Final Evidence Bar. My heart stopped. By BR I tapped it. Bar the video loaded, and the first thing I saw, BR was my sister. .br not in a wedding dress. Bar not smiling. .br not glowing. BR Brooke was sitting in her kitchen. Hair messy. .br face bare. DR eyes cold. B. She was talking to someone off camera. And the date stamp in the corner made my blood turn to ice. BR 2 weeks ago. Brooke's voice in the video was low. DR controlled. BR cruel. She said Burr, she'll sign, she always signs. Burr, a man laughed off camera. Then his voice answered, Burr, and if she doesn't? Brooke leaned closer to the camera. Her eyes were dead. Then we make her. I covered my mouth with my hand to stop myself from making a sound. Brooke kept talking. You don't understand. Ava thinks she's responsible. She thinks the world rewards good girls. She laughed softly. It doesn't, the man off camera asked. So what's the plan again? Brooke's smile was a blade. We get her signature tonight. I felt my throat tighten. Tonight, at the wedding. Brooke said, once it's signed, the trust is mine. Then she lifted a small brown bottle into frame. My stomach flipped. The man asked, "And the drink?" Brooke shrugged like it was nothing. "It won't kill her. Not fast, but it will make her look unstable." I stopped breathing. Brooke continued, "And if she panics, if she tries to fight." She smiled wider. "We have the backup plan." The man's voice was curious now. "Which is?" Brooke turned her head and looked directly into the camera, and she said 5 words. 5 words that destroyed my childhood in one breath. "Ava doesn't leave this wedding." My vision blurred. I felt the air leave my lungs like I'd been punched. The file kept playing. The camera angle shifted slightly. And suddenly I saw something I wasn't supposed to see. A reflection. In Brooke's microwave door. A man standing behind her. Tall, familiar posture, a gold watch. And I recognized him instantly. Because I'd seen him 10 minutes ago outside. Shaking hands with guests like he was family. My fiancé? My husband, the man I trusted, Daniel. He stepped into frame and kissed Brooke's head, and Brooke smiled like she'd been waiting all her life for it. Daniel's voice said, low and pleased, "She's still clueless," Brooke whispered. "She always was." My skin went ice cold. Because suddenly I understood, for the wedding wasn't just Brooke's trap. It was Daniel's too. They weren't enemies. They weren't strangers. They were partners. And I was the target. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the iPad. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding in my ears. Brooke and Daniel were laughing. Laughing at me, like I was already gone. Then the video ended. And the screen showed a second file. Hidden. Smaller. Named. If you're watching this, you have 10 minutes. My throat tightened. I tapped it. And it opened to a live camera feed. A live camera. From inside the wedding venue. I recognized it instantly. Because I could see the dance floor. The tables. The string lights. And the angle was coming from above the gift table. From a hidden camera. The camera zoomed slightly. And then I saw it. Brooke at my table. Opening my clutched. Her fingers moving fast. Pulling out the folder. Replacing papers. Planting something. She looked around, calm. Experienced. And then she whispered to someone beside her. Not Evan. Daniel. Daniel stood behind her, smiling. And Brooke handed him something small. Pen. A specific pen. Pen with a thick metal barrel. Heavy. Not normal. Daniel took it and walked toward the bar. Toward the drinks. And he dropped something into a glass. And the camera zoomed. Clear. Perfect. It caught the moment. It caught his hand. It caught the powder dissolving. My blood turned to ice. Because the USB wasn't just proof of planning. It was proof of execution. Happening right now. And my body should have collapsed in fear. But it didn't. Something else happened. Something colder. Something sharper. Something that felt like survival taking control of my bones. I looked at my own reflection in the stall door. And I smiled. Because now, I knew. Brooke wanted me to break. She wanted me emotional, panicked, messy, so she could call me unstable, so she could control the narrative. But I wasn't going to give her that. I was going to give her something she couldn't survive, a clean, undeniable, humiliating collapse, built entirely on proof. And if she thought I was predictable, good, that was my weapon. I walked out of the restroom like nothing happened, like my world hadn't just collapsed into shards of betrayal, like I wasn't carrying the deadliest thing in the building, proof. Brooke was near the dessert table, laughing too loudly, pretending she wasn't tracking every movement I made. The second her eyes found me, she moved like a shark that smelled blood. "There you are," she smiled, sweet as poison. I lifted the folder in my hand gently, and I played my role. I smiled back. "Sorry, pregnancy nausea." I lied smoothly. Brooke's eyes widened, not with sympathy, with calculation. She leaned closer. "Are you sure you're okay?" I nodded. "Yeah. Let's do it." That moment, I watched her relax, because she thought, good girl, predictable. Brooke took my arm and guided me toward the family table near the front. Front row, right where everyone could watch, right where she could control the narrative. Evan was talking to guests, distracted. The officiant was prepping for the next wedding segment. Music softened. Everything paused. Just enough. Brooke sat across from me, opened her wedding clutch, and slid a fancy pen toward me. The same pen I saw Daniel use on camera. Heavy metal barrel, cold, too deliberate. Brooke tapped the folder with her finger like she owned my future. "Sign here," she whispered with that sweet smile. I picked up the pen, held it, felt the weight of it, and then I did something subtle. I didn't sign, not yet. I looked up at her. "I just need a witness signature too, right?" Brooke blinked. "What?" I pointed to the bottom corner of the page. "Here. It says witness." Brooke's expression flickered with irritation. Then she smiled again, fast, practiced. "Oh, yes, of course," she called softly. "Daniel." My heart stayed calm. Because I wanted him here, I wanted him close, I wanted him confident. Daniel arrived looking perfect in his suit. Handsome, polished, the kind of man people trust without question. He put his hand on Brooke's shoulder and leaned down. "You okay, babe?" Brooke giggled. "Just final family paperwork." Daniel's eyes shifted to me. Something cold flashed there. Then he smiled. "Ava, always so responsible." I smiled back, and that's when I saw him do it. His eyes flicked toward my glass, the drink on my right, the special toast drink, the one he poisoned. He leaned in like he was being sweet and said, "After you sign, you should drink. You look pale." I nodded slowly. Good idea. And that's when I realized something terrifying. They weren't just stealing, they were framing. If I signed and then passed out, they'd say I was unstable. If I refused and caused a scene, they'd say I was jealous and crazy. Either way, I lose, unless I played smarter. So I did. I smiled, and I reached for the drink. Brooke's eyes lit up. Daniel's mouth twitched like he already won. And then, under the table, with the calmest hands of my life, I switched the glasses. Brooke continued whispering, pushing, "Sign, Ava." Daniel watched my hand, watched the pen, watched my breathing. I pretended to read. I pretended to hesitate. Then I finally placed the pen down. Okay. I signed, not the trust document, not her document, but a completely different page. Because earlier, in the bathroom, I had swapped pages inside the folder. The signature page Brooke wanted was gone, and in its place, a blank generic form, and on top of it, a printed line that looked harmless: confirmation of receipt, wedding media playback authorization. Brooke didn't read it. She never expected me to change anything. She just needed a signature. She just needed proof I agreed. And now, I had her fingerprints on it, her hands on the folder, her insistence, her witness. Because Daniel leaned down and signed too, without reading, without thinking. And the moment Daniel signed, I looked up at him and smiled. "Thank you." Brooke didn't notice, but Daniel did. He froze for half a second, like he felt something shift in the air. Brooke snatched the folder back like it was a trophy. Finally, she stood up fast. "Now let's toast." She lifted her glass, the wrong glass, the poisoned one, the one she thought was mine. Daniel lifted his too, smiling. "Family," he said. Brooke's voice brightened. "To new beginnings." They clinked and they drank, and I didn't stop them, because the best revenge is letting someone walk into the trap they built for you. At first, nothing happened. Brooke laughed. Daniel smirked. He leaned close to her and whispered something. Then, slowly, Brooke blinked. Her smile faltered. Her hand went to her throat. She coughed once, then twice. Daniel frowned, looking at her. "Brooke?" Brooke's face drained of color. Not dramatic, not theatrical, like the blood simply left her. She swayed. Daniel grabbed her arm. "Hey, what's wrong?" Brooke tried to speak, but her words came out strange, slurred, confused, and her eyes locked on me. And in that moment, she understood. She understood I knew. She understood the drink was wrong. She understood. She just poisoned herself. Daniel's face changed instantly. His eyes snapped toward me, and I smiled, soft, small, deadly, because now I had two things: proof and time. I stood up slowly. Brooke stumbled backward, trying to stay upright. Guests began to notice. The laughter faded, music lowered. Someone whispered, "Is the bride okay?" Evan rushed over. "Brooke?" He grabbed her shoulders. Brooke tried to speak, but she couldn't. Her knees weakened. Daniel stepped forward, panicked now. What did you do? His voice wasn't sweet anymore. It was sharp, threatened. I leaned close to him and whispered, "Check the footage." Daniel's eyes widened. Because he knew I had it. But before he could move, Victor appeared again, like he had been waiting in the shadows this entire time. He walked right past Daniel, right past Brooke, and he looked at me calmly. "Ma'am." He slid one finger across his tie like he was adjusting it. But it was a signal, a simple signal. And then he whispered, "It's time." My heart stayed calm, because now I understood exactly who Victor was. Not a guest, not a stranger. A man who knew what Brooke and Daniel were. A man who had been watching them. A man who needed one last signature, one last confirmation, so the evidence could be used. I nodded once, and I walked toward the DJ booth. The wedding had a massive LED screen behind the stage. Brooke paid extra for it. Of course she did. She wanted everything cinematic, perfect. She just didn't realize she was paying for her own public execution. I walked up to the DJ. He frowned. Can I help you?" I held up the folder, the paper, the signature, and I said calmly, "I'm authorized." The DJ hesitated, then nodded, and I handed him the USB. Behind me I heard Daniel's voice rise. "No, stop!" But it was too late. Because when proof is real, it moves faster than lies. The screen flickered, the crowd murmured, and then the video played. Brooke's kitchen, 2 weeks ago. Brooke, bare-faced, cold, speaking like a predator. "She'll sign. She always signs." The guests laughed nervously at first, thinking it was a joke. Then the man's voice. "Daniel." Clear, familiar. "And if she doesn't?" Brooke's voice again. "Then we make her." The crowd froze. A wave of silence rolled through the garden. Evan's face went pale. Brooke tried to scream, but she couldn't. Her mouth opened and nothing came out. And then, the video hit the worst part. Brooke holding the brown bottle. "It won't kill her." "Not fast." Gasps erupted. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." Then the second file, the live camera footage. Daniel at the bar, dropping powder into the glass, clear, undeniable. And as the video zoomed in, the entire crowd turned their heads slowly and stared directly at Daniel, like they were watching a mask melt. Daniel stepped back instinctively. His eyes darted for exits. His mouth opened, but no words came out, because proof doesn't allow excuses. Evan stumbled forward. "Daniel," his voice cracked. You did that?" Daniel shook his head fast. No, this is edited." But the staff and guests weren't listening, because the camera quality was too clean. And then the screen played the reflection clip. Brooke kissing Daniel's head, Brooke smiling like she owned him, and suddenly the entire wedding understood. This marriage was a cover, a performance, and I was the target. Brooke collapsed to the ground, not elegantly, not beautifully. She fell like a puppet cut from strings, and Daniel turned and ran. Daniel pushed through guests, shoving chairs aside. People screamed. Someone knocked over a table. Evan stood frozen. He wasn't stopping him. He couldn't, because his brain hadn't caught up with the reality that his wife was a criminal. Daniel reached the garden gate, and right there, 2 police officers stepped in, as if they had been waiting for the exact second the truth went public. One officer raised his weapon. Daniel cross, on the ground. Daniel froze, his chest heaved. His hands twitched like he was deciding if he wanted to be stupid. Then he backed up slowly. "No, wait, this is..." The officer grabbed him. Daniel fought, not hard, not like a man trying to escape, like a man trying to keep his image. But the officer didn't care about image. He cared about truth. They cuffed him, and when Daniel turned his head, he saw me. Standing perfectly still. No shaking, no crying, no collapse, just calm. And Daniel whispered, furious, "You're ruining my life." And I whispered back, "No, you ruined yours. I just brought the evidence." Brooke was still on the floor, surrounded by bridesmaids. Someone called for an ambulance. Evan stood over her like his whole soul had been ripped out. He looked at me, eyes wet, voice broken. "Ava, why?" I stared at him for a long moment, and I said quietly, "Because she never wanted you. She wanted control, she wanted money, and she wanted me erased." Evan shook his head slowly. "I didn't know." I nodded. "I know. Then Brooke's eyes opened wider. She tried to speak, she tried to crawl, but she couldn't. The sedative made her body slow, her mind trapped in panic, and I leaned down close to her ear, and I whispered, "You wanted me to sign my life away, so I signed yours instead." Brooke's eyes filled with terror. She tried to shake her head, but it was too late. The police officer approached with a small evidence bag. Inside was the brown bottle. Inside was the pen. Inside was the folder. Inside was the signed authorization sheet. The officer said calmly, "We have enough to charge you." Brooke's mouth opened. A sound came out, broken, not a word, just a helpless noise. And for the first time in her life, my sister couldn't control her narrative. People think revenge has to be loud. It doesn't. The best revenge is quiet. Because quiet means you had time to plan, time to collect proof, time to wait until the lie collapses under its own weight. That night, I didn't win because I screamed. I won because I smiled, because I knew the moment the truth showed up, Brooke's entire life would end, and mine would finally begin, because the truth doesn't need drama. It only needs one thing: evidence. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to The Final Evidence. Because every lie leaves proof,